Echoes of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Tonight, this Fox 11 News special explores the legacy of the Great Lakes' most haunting maritime disaster and the people still connected to it today.
And after 50 years, will it be tougher for you, or?
It seems to be tough this year. It hasn't been the past years, but for whatever reason, this year is hard. It's hard.
What we've learned since November 10th, 1975, and how the tragic anniversary is being observed in our area.
Plus, how new discoveries beneath the Great Lakes are shedding light on our region's long, perilous shipping history. The sinking of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald 50 years ago on Lake Superior will be remembered tomorrow.
During its day, it was the largest freighter on the Great Lakes. I talked with family of one of the crew members about keeping alive the memory of those lost. The 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald will be marked with the ringing of the ship's bell, retrieved from the bottom of Lake Superior some 30 years ago. The bell was recovered during the last sanctioned dive to the wreckage, which has been designated a grave site by the Canadian government.
The Great Lakes and the Coast Guard has a young
family of those 29 crew members who went down with the cargo ship routinely take part in the annual remembrance ceremony at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum on the shores of Lake Superior in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Among them, Debbie Champeau, who was just 17 years old when her father, Oliver Buck Champeau, was lost aboard the SS Edmund Fitzgerald.
What is it like to have this yearly reminder?
It doesn't feel like closure at all. It feels like it's yesterday, and it brings him back. And that makes me very sad.
Debbie's father is one of two crew members on the Edmund Fitzgerald who grew up in Sturgeon Bay. The other is Russell Haskell. Both were engineers on the ship. Buck Champeau was 41 when he died after sailing the world on different ships.
Did he share a lot about his time on ships?
No, and honestly, I didn't even really understand what he did on the ship. I had no idea about anything with the Fitz. All I knew is he was going away on a ship. I just knew he'd be back, and I'd hear a phone call, and it would be him. So I'm back in port.
Until that fateful night on November 10th, 1975, when the Edmund Fitzgerald would go down in a storm.
And after 50 years, will it be tougher for you, or?
It seems to be tough this year. It hasn't been the past years, but for whatever reason, this year is hard. It's hard.
It's amazing how fast 50 years goes by, because I remember the day it happened like it was yesterday, and I couldn't believe that it was actually happening, and that my uncle would be gone.
Debbie's cousin Mike Champeau is the son of Buck's brother Jack. He says the two brothers were very close.
I've never seen two brothers closer in my life.
Yeah. You could see the bond between them, and
oh, yes.
They kind of looked out for each other?
Oh, yeah. And so when my dad was in Vietnam, my uncle said, if you pass in, if you get killed in Vietnam, I'll come get your body back. And that was the deal made. So when Uncle Buck went down on the boat on the Edmund, my dad tried everything to bring his body back up.
That's Jack on the right during the 1995 expedition to retrieve the bell from the Fitzgerald after it was determined recovery of all 29 bodies would not be an option. Instead, they would be left with the Fitzgerald to rest in peace. Once the bell was cut loose and brought up, it was Mike's father.
Very, very emotional time.
Who was the first to ring it.
Yeah, I didn't even know he was the first to ring it until last year. I was told that.
Excellent.
So, yeah, it's a great honor.
For Debbie, she relies on that bell from the ship to bring her peace year after year.
I have a grave that's empty at St. Joe's, and it just meant something to have a piece of the Fitz.
Once again this year, Debbie will be surrounded by others who lost loved ones on the Fitzgerald. And at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum in the UP, they will once again ring the ship's bell 29 times to honor them.
It's very special. It's a piece of where they were. It's the last thing I feel they heard, that bell going off.
You just want your father to rest in peace.
I want him to rest in peace.
You can't tell the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald's final voyage without discussing the powerful storm that sunk her. Fox 11 meteorologist Phil Castro breaks down how that storm evolved and what the Fitzgerald experienced before succumbing to the maelstrom.
The storm that struck the Great Lakes in early November of 1975 started out in classic fashion for storms that tend to wallop our corner of the world. On November 8th, low pressure tracked out of the Rockies and across the Oklahoma Panhandle before making that classic left-hand hook up toward the Great Lakes. And as the Edmund Fitzgerald departed Superior on the afternoon of November 9th, conditions were actually pretty quiet. Modest northeasterly winds around 15 miles per hour and a swell, if you could even call it that, of about 1 to 2 feet. But before long, the approaching and strengthening storm would start to make its presence known. By 1 in the morning on the 10th, winds around the Fitzgerald as it worked out into Lake Superior had picked up to 35 to 40 miles per hour. Waves likely up around 10 feet at this point. Harsh conditions, but still nothing for a ship her size. And this was especially true since she was heading straight into those winds and the waves. It allowed her to really effectively cut through those swells. Keep that little bit in mind. Now, as she started to turn across the northern end of the lake, winds remained strong, seas still up at about 10 feet at mid-morning. Now, late in the morning on the 10th, the Fitzgerald would pass near the center of the area of low pressure. Now, this actually provided a brief break from the gales and from the high seas as the wind field shifted around. But now, the storm itself was actually exploding in intensity as it lifted off to the north and toward the Hudson Bay. So just a few hours later, winds had swung around to the northwest and they had picked back up to gale force, 25 to 45 miles per hour where the Fitzgerald was sailing. And even bigger problems were developing ahead of her because as the winds shifted to the northwest, it was pushing the biggest waves and focusing them down in the southeast corner of Lake Superior. This big open fetch of water here allowed the waves to build up energy and momentum over hundreds of miles. So by the time the Fitzgerald was getting down into that corner of the lake, well, it was dealing with winds that could have been reaching over 80 miles per hour at times and constant waves that were getting up over 20 feet high. And these waves were also now broadsiding her as they moved from west to east. That's a much more dangerous situation than meeting them head on. And it's thought that the Edmund Fitzgerald succumbed to these conditions at around 7:15 in the evening on the 10th. Now, the storm itself, certainly a powerful one, was not particularly rare in its intensity. Winds and waves like the ones that the Fitzgerald experienced have theoretical return periods of just a few years, but a couple things were extremely rare. First was the west to east direction of those waves. Climatologically, almost all waves of this height actually occur in more of a north-south fashion. So it's likely a part of the reason why at one point Captain McSorley radioed that he'd never seen such seas. Second, the fact that the ship happened to even encounter this terrible combination at the worst possible time is also extremely unlikely and frankly unlucky. Relatively speaking, these lakes are huge and the area of them covered at any given point by shipping traffic is minuscule, and that the Fitzgerald happened into this combination of conditions was incredibly unfortunate and ultimately incredibly tragic. Meteorologist Phil DeCastro, Fox 11 News.
We have an interactive map of the Fitzgerald's final voyage on our fox11online.com homepage. You can learn about specific moments and find video of the Fitzgerald shipwreck site. Scan this QR code to find the timeline and that video.
The SS Arthur M. Anderson was the last ship in contact with the Fitzgerald before it sank. It was 10 miles behind the Fitzgerald that fateful night. The Anderson was also the first rescue ship on the scene. 3 years ago, Skyfox captured aerial images of the Anderson arriving at the port of Greenbay. The Anderson has been sailing the Great Lakes for 73 years. It was put into service in 1952. What caused the Fitzgerald to sink is still a mystery, but the tragedy led to safety improvements on Great Lake freighters.
Up next, experts weigh in on what's changed over the past 5 decades and how the Fitzgerald was closely tied to Wisconsin.
The Edmund Fitzgerald was launched on June 7, 1958 from the Great Lakes Engineering Works at River Rouge, Michigan. At that time, it was the largest ship on the Great Lakes at 729 feet long. It was considered state-of-the-art and owned by Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company based in Milwaukee, which was the Fitz's home port. In fact, the ship is named after Edmund Fitzgerald, the president of Northwestern Mutual at the time. And it included what was considered luxurious guest suites on the ship, allowing for company officials and their friends to ride along and cruise the Great Lakes in style when in season.
The sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald 50 years ago sparked significant safety changes in Great Lakes shipping. With a closer look, once again, here's meteorologist Phil DeCastro.
The Edmund Fitzgerald remains the last significant shipwreck to occur on the Great Lakes 50 years ago. 50 years is a long time, and a lot has changed since then.
Just think of our own lives and technology and how much it's changed. If it's the performance of the propulsion system, if it's the hull form development, if it's the electronics and communication systems, the entertainment systems, right?
Justin Slater is Vice President of Business Development for Fincantieri Bay Shipbuilding in Sturgeon Bay. More weather data, better navigation, better communications, they all make the trade far less dangerous than it used to be. But Slater says the ambiguity surrounding exactly how the Fitzgerald sunk made it impossible to enact specific changes. Great Lakes shipwreck historian Rick Mixter says it's also just a matter of numbers.
There were 300 ships on the water in 1975. Today we have about 80 active boats, but during that big gale we just had on the lower Lakes Michigan, Lake Superior, we only had probably 4 boats that were even out.
Mixter says the Fitzgerald becoming a larger-than-life tale may have also affected future captains.
We see it now with ships that carry twice the cargo of the Fitzgerald, waiting out storms of 10-foot seas. That means that there is that common sense, and perhaps it's a song, perhaps it's passing over the Fitzgerald's grave where 29 sailors are on their way to those Sioux Locks. Maybe that puts that fear in there that maybe needed to be there to prevent the Fitzgerald.
There will never be a boat that Mother Nature can't sink. Ultimately, it comes down to us, the human element involved, to try to prevent those tragedies as best we can. Phil DeCastro, Fox 11 News.
You can learn more about the Edmund Fitzgerald during a visit to Door County. The Door County Maritime Museum has a special exhibit up to mark the milestone anniversary. The exhibit at the museum is called "We Are Holding Our Own," the last words the captain of the Fitz said over the radio when asked about weathering the storm the night of November 10, 1975. The exhibit features the 2 crew members who grew up in Door County, Oliver Buck Champeau and Russell Haskell. And the exhibit highlights the massive state-of-the-art cargo ship of its time that was supposed to be invincible on the Great Lakes.
What do you hope people who come to see the exhibit take away from this?
I really hope that they take away exactly how powerful the Great Lakes actually are. I think a lot of people tend to think, oh, it's a lake, it's just a lake, it's just a lake. It's not just a lake. It is an inland ocean. It is very powerful. It is not to be taken. We need to respect the power that exists in these waters.
Our coverage continues online. Just scan the QR code on your screen to head to fox11online.com. You will find a photo gallery which features photos of the 29 men lost on the Edmund Fitzgerald. As we've shown you tonight, the 50th anniversary is being marked in many ways.
One unique memorial happened months ago in the same waters the Fitzgerald went down in. After the break, my conversation with 2 Northeast Wisconsin swimmers, how far they went, and their inspiration.
To commemorate the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald and to honor the lives lost that day, dozens of brave swimmers jumped into Lake Superior.
And they didn't just jump in, they swam for miles. Here's a look at the journey of some of those swimmers.
Go jump down. All right, Lori. Lori's in. Woo!
That is Lori Juergensmeyer jumping into the cold waters of the St. Mary's River, the waterway that connects Lake Superior and Lake Huron. It's her 4th 30-minute swim of the day, She's relieving her teammate and coworker, Christina Calvello.
You know I always thought, oh, a river, like is across the street. It's like an ocean. I mean, you could hardly see across. It's so big. So, yeah, it was like a little intimidating.
Lori and Christina and their 2 other teammates, another coworker and Christina's 21-year-old daughter, were part of a 68-person relay that day back in August. Their route?
The point was to finish the route of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
A memorial swim in honor of the 29 who perished on November 10th, 1975.
Okay, swimmers going in.
Got any water?
Swimmers in the water.
17 different teams were assigned a multi-mile stretch of the Edmund Fitzgerald's route, some swimmers starting directly over where the ship went down.
And I can't even imagine. I don't think I would have been able to hold it together on that first stage, being there above, because it's technically a grave site now. But yeah, we definitely kept them in mind.
The 4 members of Christina and Lori's team, all of them from Fond du Lac, swam 6 miles each in 30-minute intervals.
Our rotation 4 is done. It's getting a little choppy out, but we are getting there. Does anybody know how many miles we have left?
No.
I'm thinking we have 8-ish. That's what I would guess. So, in theory, 2 more rotations each.
All 68 swimmers that day swam with a small piece of iron ore. That's what the Fitzgerald was carrying when she sank.
Looking rough. Is in sight.
Looking rough, but we're gonna finish.
For this team and for all those swimmers, the day the Fitzgerald sank and the day they swam in her honor are days that won't soon be forgotten.
Just being able to honor them and being thankful for all of these people who do jobs like that. And to be able to recognize it for these families that, hey, there are people out there who do really care.
While the Fitzgerald wreck site in Lake Superior is a protected grave and archaeological site under Canadian law, divers are finding more shipwrecks across the Great Lakes.
Yeah, when we come back, how many new shipwreck reports are popping up and why that is? We all know the Edmund Fitzgerald as the most well-known shipwreck in the Great Lakes, partly because it was the last major freighter to go down. But it certainly isn't the only noteworthy wreck.
There are well over 6,000 shipwrecks between the 5 Great Lakes. In recent years, however, it feels like more and more shipwrecks have been discovered. Tonight, why experts say that is. Hundreds of shipwrecks dot the bottom of Lake Michigan.
We have a little bit over 780 reported losses here. Not all of those have been discovered. We're a little over the 300 number as far as known shipwrecks.
And those numbers are just in Wisconsin waters. Tamara Thompson is a maritime archaeologist for the Wisconsin Historical Society. When a shipwreck is reported, she's one of the 2 state divers who will dive down to survey the wreckage. Sometimes her eyes are the first to view the ships in hundreds of years.
It's a real honor.
And lately, she's been doing it a lot more often.
It used to be that we would get a discovery every year or so. But lately, we've had, 10, 15. This last year, we had 14 reports of new shipwrecks in Wisconsin waters.
Thompson says the uptick in new shipwreck discoveries in our area has several contributing factors, and part of it is because of the media. Media coverage on historic shipwreck discoveries lets people know there are more of them to be found, and as a result, there are more non-traditional people looking for them.
We're getting reports from beachcombers. Shipwrecks wash out of beaches. We've gotten reports from power parachutists, so people in ultralights that are flying along the shoreline after a storm.
A lot of people who are interested in the shipwrecks, not from a scuba diving perspective. These are people who are kayakers, they're paddleboarders. They're just, people who are historically curious and interested, citizen scientists, if you will.
Brendan Baylod, a maritime historian, leads the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association, a group that searches for wrecks and educates people on underwater archaeology. His group has been able to find and identify dozens of wrecks. Baylod and Thompson both say another major reason for more discoveries is thanks to better technology and more access to it.
So a side-scan sonar that once cost $80,000, you can now get for, 5 or 10. You don't have to scuba dive to look at these anymore. You can put a remote-operated vehicle in the water that costs $1,000. So these are things that are well within the reach of most educationalists.
And sometimes that underwater tech isn't even necessary. You can hop on your phone or computer to search for wrecks through satellite imagery or even land records.
So there's what's called GIS records for people who are, landowners, but they've updated LiDAR imagery. So that's light and laser imagery. And so in a lot of cases, you can see down through the water really well.
We have a lot of people who are finding them from Google Earth. They're, flying over the shoreline and finding shallow water shipwrecks.
And that wouldn't be possible without the help of the invasive zebra and quagga mussels that have taken over inland waters like Lake Michigan, giving us clearer water.
And with the clear water, that satellite imagery is easier to see down deeper through the water column. And so that's why some of those shipwrecks that are being discovered up in Door County and in shallow areas around the state have been noticed because of the clear water.
So if you feel like you're seeing more and more stories in the news or online about yet another shipwreck find, it's because you are. And modern interest in the topic is largely thanks to one well-known ship and her crew.
It wasn't until the Edmund Fitzgerald was lost, and really until Gordon Lightfoot wrote his song, and the Edmund Fitzgerald became a cultural icon, nationwide, that people became aware of the Great Lakes and its legacy of shipwrecks. In that way, I think the Edmund Fitzgerald's loss really helped enlarge the national consciousness about the Great Lakes, about the culture here, and about the shipwrecks.
Thanks for joining us tonight for this Fox 11 News special, Echoes of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Our coverage continues tomorrow on our YouTube page and on Fox 11 News at 9.